Okay, this is a sikha on Likutei Sikha, is Chelek Chavdal, Likutei Sikha is book 24, the parsha of Tetzeh, the fourth sikha. This sikha is a short sikha, but I would say, we say in English, it packs a lot of punch. It's boom, straight to the point, and it answers for me. It confirms for me something that over my years of working with people, I've kind of thought was the case, but I didn't have the authority to say it, but by the last paragraph of this sikha will confirm it. We'll get there. First of all, in the beginning, we start like this. We've already spoken many times since that, but then when Rashi, when he explains in the Torah, his commentary has to explain every single question that may arise to a 5-year-old. And where we find that Rashi doesn't explain a question that seems to require explanation. So first of all, sometimes Rashi says, Lo yadati. Rashi's not scared to say, I don't know. It's amazing when you learn with a 5-year-old and he hears from the great Rashi. Great Rashi, the 5-year-old hears from great Rashi. Sometimes Rashi says, Lo yadati. You know what kind of message that gives? Nava, humility. And therefore, when you come to a pasuk where it seems to be that Rashi should explain something and Rashi doesn't, so don't say he didn't know what to say, because if he saw there was an issue that he couldn't address, he would say, Lo yadati, I didn't know. But if he doesn't say anything, it means that obviously it's not a question. Or the question could be understood already by something he said elsewhere, which the 5-year-old had access to, and based on that, there's no question. So according to this, we want to understand in our parsha, there seems to be something a little bit questionable. The Torah says, Ki yeriv bein anashim, when there'll be a quarrel between people. V'nigishu el hamishpat u'shefatum, they come to the justice system, the judge, and he judges them. V'tzdiku et atzadik, and the court, the Beit Din, will justify, make correct the tzaddik, the one who's in the right. Virishiu et harasha, and they will say that the person, they will find guilty the rasha, the one who did the wrong thing. And if the one who did the wrong thing is deserving to get hakot, to get malkut, to get lashes, then the shofet, the judge, will make him lie down and they'll give him 40 minus 1, 39 lashes. So these words that they come to the judge, v'hitzdiku et tzaddik, that the judge makes the tzaddik correct, justifies the one who's right, exonerates or finds innocent the one that's correct, the tzaddik. V'yeshua Rasha finds guilty the one who did the bad. Those, it seems to be redundant words, extra words. We understand, obviously, if they're coming to the judgment, they're coming to the judge. The judge will say that the guilty one is guilty and the innocent one is innocent. Well, why? What is these two words adding here? It should have said, if you would have read the pasuk in a simpler way, it should have said, Ki yeriv, when there'll be a quarrel by people and they come to judgment. If the one who's wrong needs malchus, need to get lashes, this is what you should do. So why does not Rashi explain the redundancy of the lashon, the extra words that seemingly don't have to be here? Okay, so there's two extra words that seem to be here. One is they're coming to the court. V'tzdiku v'yirshiu. The judge is making the righteous one, the innocent one, he's justifying him and holding guilty the guilty one. So, okay, in those two sets, you could yet say that the fact that it says v'yeshiu et harasha, that they will hold guilty the wicked one, maybe we could learn that the reason it says that is because it's an introduction to the next part of the pasuk, which says v'hayayim bin hakot rasha, if the bad guy deserves lashes, and this is how you do it. In other words, the pasuk is saying when there'll be an argument and they come to the judge and there's one who's guilty, so if he's a guilty person who deserves, according to the Torah, malchus, to get lashes, so then the continuation, v'hayayim bin hakot rasha, then this and this is the way that you should do the malchus. However, it's very difficult to say that, because if the pasuk is going to say if this guy deserves lashes, then obviously that means he's v'hirshiu et harasha. That obviously means the judge found him guilty. And also, on the contrary, it says v'hirshiu et harasha. That could even give us a mistakenly think that every person who's a rasha, who loses in court, gets malchus, and that's not the case. There's only certain things that will lead to lashes. However, even if we do find an explanation why it says v'yeshiu et harasha, that the judge will find guilty the guilty one, but we don't understand still, even though the explanation whether or not it makes perfect sense or not, but at least some kind of explanation. But still, the words v'yitzdiku et hatzadik that Hashem, that the judge justifies the one who's innocent, who's righteous. Why does it have to say that? You can't say that this is another instruction. You could say, well, maybe the Torah is giving us another time, said so many times already, that you have to make a din tzedek, that you have to, judges have to judge correctly and justly. Maybe this is just another time that the Torah says it. Just like we find that sometimes the Torah will repeat certain things to make more emphasis. And as we say, sometimes there's a few lavim. There's a few, if you do one Aveira, because the Torah spoke about it a few times, it's in order to give more emphasis. And if you do that sin, you transgress not just the one time Hashem spoke about it, but the 3-4 times Hashem spoke about it. So it makes it more. So maybe here it's just take him to court, and the court has to, it's diku v'yeshiu, they have to find the one who's guilty and hold him guilty and make innocent the one who's innocent. Maybe it's just an instruction to the court to judge honestly. We've said it before, it doesn't matter, but it's another instruction. But says the Rebbe, it doesn't seem so, because there's a whole, it's not just, there's a bunch of extra words here. It says when they have a fight and they come to the judge, there's this extra insert, and he makes the righteous one tzaddik, he justifies the righteous one, v'yeshiu et harasha, and he holds guilty the wicked one. That seems to be telling us something more than just be done din tzedek, judge an honest judgment, which we've said already many times before. Paragraph 2. In the Sifri, we know the Sifri is the Medrashic Pirush, halachic, the halachic Pirush of Medrash on the Torah. The Sifri says that there's an opinion that from these words, v'yitzdiku et hatzadik, that they make innocent the one who's correct. This is an instruction, tzadkeu kedei shelo yilkeh. Try and make this person just, try and make him innocent so he shouldn't get beaten by lashes. As some commentaries say, that this means to say you should always try and open up positively. Open up with v'hitzdiku. Try and make this case a case where the people being brought to court will not get lashes. In other words, instead of trying to find what the guy did wrong, try and see if there's any angle where there can be v'hitzdiku, where there can somehow be a way where they don't get lashes. And only then see which things they should be held accountable for. What is the rishut? In other words, first look for the zitkut, for the correctness, and then look for what they did wrong. Just like we know there's a halacha when a court hears dinei nefashot, capital cases, they have to first be potchim b'zchut. You first have to open up to see if there's any zchut, if there's any favorable thing that can be brought to the case. Even the person that's being there's one person. Person that's being brought to be held responsible for dinei nefashot, that may have to be put to death. We first open him up to try and see something positive. So here also, maybe the pasuk is telling us that when any court case, even if it's only malkut, it's only lashes, start with v'hitzdiku. Start with trying to find if there's an angle where the person can be innocent. But we can't say that Rashi goes with that, because Rashi should have said it openly. A 5-year-old wouldn't pick this up, especially the Sifri does explain it. Sifri had to explain it. That means that it's not understood without the Sifri explaining it. So the 5-year-old wouldn't know this. Rashi should say it. Why doesn't Rashi say it? Especially, it's not so simple to read that into the simple reading of the pasuk, because in the case where the person comes to the court to be held responsible for nefashot, for capital offense, he may be put to death. There's one person, and we have two ways of looking at that one person: tzaddik or rasha. So we say you open up you should always open up with trying to find his innocence. Same person. Here we're talking about two people. We're talking about one person that we find him innocent, the other person we find him guilty. So if it's two people, That's the simple reading of the pasuk. If we want to say first open up lizchut, it means we're talking about the same person. That's not the simple reading of the pasuk. We can't. So that's not easy to put into the pasuk. So how much more so we can't say that Rashi, simply speaking, understood what the Gemara tells us about this pasuk. What does the Gemara tell us? Here's a fascinating thing. The Gemara says that who is the v'hitzdiko et tzaddik v'yishir et rasha? They make the tzaddik righteousness. I mean, why do they have to work hard to make the tzaddik right? So the Gemara says this is talking about something more complicated than a standard two people coming to court. This is coming in a case where lechatchila, the one who's a tzaddik, was called a rasha, was called wicked. In what case? Two witnesses came and they said about Reuven that he did something bad to Shimon. They come to court, and now they're going to tell Reuven, you have to get lashes for doing something wrong to Shimon. Maybe if you hit him, you're hitting somebody, you can get malchus. Another set of Eidim come and they say, these two witnesses that said they saw Reuven hit Shimon, they were with us in another city at that time. Classic Eidim Zomimim. They weren't there at that time. We don't know if Reuven hit Shimon or not, but that's not our business. But those witnesses that says he did and that he's going to get lashes, they were with us in another city. So what happens now? The tzaddik, who's really the tzaddik? The guy who's been accused of hitting. When these two witnesses, the new witnesses come and say the first witnesses were not there, now the tzaddik me ikara, the guy who was originally a tzaddik, we now vindicate him. We show that, yeah, he is a tzaddik. So there's a flipping here. That's what the pasuk means. The guy was a tzaddik, but we didn't know. He was being hauled into court by witnesses and called a rasha, called as being doing something bad. Now we have to reverse it because now the eidim are found to be wicked. But it doesn't make sense to say that this is what Rashi is learning. And who's the rasha? The rasha in this case is the witnesses that came and gave false. It doesn't seem like Rashi is learning this, especially to say that Rashi meant this without saying it. I mean, the Gemara spells it out. Rashi doesn't say it. Now remember, Rashi doesn't always explain the pasuk according to the Gemara. The Gemara is next level of depth. Rashi is pshuto shel mikra. Rashi doesn't comment here. Why doesn't he comment? What does this mean? We see it bother the Gemara. We see it bother the Sifri. But Rashi just doesn't comment. Why not? Gimel says the Rebbe, paragraph 3, we can say that Taka, Rashi doesn't say anything here. You know why? Because we already understand what this is talking about by a previous Rashi, one pasuk at the beginning of the pasuk. Pasuk says, Ki yeriv, when there will be an argument. Comments Rashi, Sofam liot nigashim el mishpat, when there will be an argument. The pasuk says, and they go to be judged. Rashi says, when there's an argument, inevitably at the end they will go to the judgment. Emor me'ata, says Rashi, let me now derive from this. Ein shalom yotzei mitoch meriva. Peace does not come out of quarreling. They quarreled, now they go to court. You see, they're not peaceful. Mi garam lelot lifrosh min atzadik, continues Rashi. Who caused Lot to separate from Avram? Heve omer zu meriva. It was the meriva. There was a quarrel. Vayhi riv bein ro'ei miknei Avram lebein ro'ei miknei Lot. There was a quarrel between the shepherds of Avram and the shepherds of Lot, and then Avram and Lot had to separate from Avram. So now the question arises like this. I don't understand. Rashi makes it sound like it's a horrible thing. You see what happened? They had a fight, and in the end, where did they land up? In court. Sounds like going to court is a terrible thing. Why? When you go to court, that makes peace, doesn't it? We know when Yitro said, make a system of shoftim, he says, V'shafetu et ha'am b'chol eit, they should judge the people all the time. And when you do this, and you have enough judges, v'kam kol ha'am hazeh, al mekomo yavo b'shalom, all the people will have peace. Why would they have peace? Because they can make like it says, there's a footnote here, the Gur Aryeh says, because they can make a pshara, they can come to if you're fighting and you don't know who's right, who's wrong, you have to go to a third party, go to the court, and the court will tell you who's right, who's wrong. That will allow you to make a compromise. That will allow you to make peace, right? So why over here is Rashi saying they're going to come to the court? You see, when you have a quarrel, leads to something horrible, goes to court. Okay, what's wrong? Goes to court and figure it out. And the questions on this Rashi is even more. The source of this Rashi is taken from Sifri, but there the Sifri says it a little different. The language in Sifri is like this. Ein shalom yotzei mitoch meriva. Peace does not come out of a quarrel. Mi garam lazel lilkot. Who caused this guy to get lashes? The quarrel. In other words, the quarrel causes that one person should get malkot, because there's one guy who's wrong. Rashi doesn't use that language. Rashi says, not that the quarrel causes this guy to get malchus. It causes both of them to go to the court, as if there's some guilt that both of them have for coming to court. So what does it mean? What's going on here? So the explanation is like this. Rashi is coming to answer also why the pasuk calls it a riv. The word riv is negative. The word riv already means meriva, ravanim, quarreling. What other word could have been used? We find in many other places that the case that's brought before a judge is called davar. It says in the Parsha of Yisrael. Parsha of Yisrael says, Ki lahem davar. Yitro asked Moshe Rabbeinu, why are you busy with the people all day? What did he tell them? Yitro told his father-in-law, what should I do? Ki lahem davar ba'ilai. When they have a matter, they come to me and I have to judge them. Obviously, they're having a disagreement, but he calls it a davar. That's more innocuous. That's more power. That's davar. Davar, like dvarim. They have an issue between themselves. It doesn't call it a riv. Or mi bal dvarim yigash aleim. Moshe Rabbeinu, when he went up on the mountain, said, Hinei Aaron v'chur. I'm leaving Aaron v'chur. Whoever needs questions, go speak to them. Bal dvarim, like whoever is having an argument, they'll figure it out. Here, the language is riv, which means quarrel. It's a negative language. So what does Rashi say? Like we find, for example, not always is it negative, but many times in the Torah it's negative. Like we find the meriva, the quarrel between the shepherds of Lot. The Ro'ei Miknei Avram, the Ro'ei Miknei Lot, the shepherds of Avram, the shepherds of Lot. We find that the shepherds of Avimelech, Vayarivu Ro'ei Gerar, the shepherds of Gerar, which were worshiping for Avimelech, which were servicing Avimelech, they fought against the shepherds of Avra, or maybe they fought the shepherds of Yitzchak. And then we find the Torah says in Mishpatim, when people fight and one person hits the other one. So you see that Yerivun, Meriva, it's a negative expression. So now Rashi is trying to address this issue here in the pasuk, because according to this, if the word Meriva is more negative, it should have said Ki Yed Davar. Two people have an issue. Then they go to the judgment. Actually, the Rebbe brings that the Unkelus, Targum Unkelus translates the word riv in this pasuk, not matsuta, which would mean quarrel, but din, when they have an issue of judgment. Why does this pasuk, though, use the word riv and not davar? So Rashi has to answer, why is this pasuk using a negative word? So you know what Rashi says? It's a big chiddush, by the way. Rashi says, Ki riv, when there is a quarrel, sofam liyot nigashim el hamishpat, they're going to be going to the judgment. And I will say now, says Rashi, shalom doesn't come from an argument. Emor me'ata. Ein shalom yotzei mitoch meriva. Peace doesn't come from an argument. In other words, what we're talking here is not just a disagreement. There's an attitude issue here. This disagreement is not just two people amicably, peacefully trying to figure out who's correct. What should we do? Sometimes people have a disagreement. Look, I'm not sure. Do I owe you or you owe me? To be honest, I'm not sure. I don't want to take what's not mine. You don't want to take what's not yours. Let's go to a mishpat. Let's go to a judgment. That's not a riv. That's not a riv. That's not a quarrel. A riv already means that it's escalated into a personal issue. It's a quarrel. It's a machloket. This pasuk is talking riv ben anashim. When there's an argument, this Rashi says, Ein shalom yotzeh. This will not lead to peace, even through mishpat. You think you're coming to a mishpat so the judge can figure everything out. If you're coming in a way of riv, it's not going to lead to peace. B'meila, Generally speaking, continues the Rebbe, when two people have a sichsuch, when they have a disagreement, which is not a quarrel, so the sichsuch, the disagreement, can be ironed out and bring peace. Either they work it out themselves between themselves, that sometimes happens, or the Beis Din finds a way to come to a, what's a pshara? A compromise. Or even in the case where the Beis Din decides that one person is entirely correct and the other person is entirely wrong, if they're not quarreling and they're looking for the truth, that kind of mishpat, that kind of decision by a judge will bring them to peace, not to machloket. However, when there's a riv, the pasuk is talking when there's a quarrel, and this sichsuch, this disagreement already gets lost, gets expressed now in a krigerai, in a fight, in a battle, in a argument, strife. Here, peace is not going to come from this kind of a quarrel. Yes, you'll say, well, I'll go to court. I'm schlepping you to court. Okay, they'll go to court. You know what's going to happen? Maybe even the Beis Din will give a definite decision. There's a tzaddik, there's a rasha. Even then, it's not going to lead to peace. There's grumbling, there's malcontent, there's bad blood. They came and they didn't come in an objective way to find the truth. They already escalated or downgraded to a full-blown personal quarrel. You're saying shalom is higher than tzedek. Yeah, but not necessarily. If you're coming from a perspective of honesty, then the tzedek can lead you to shalom. The person who's wrong will accept it. It's not a personal thing. It's I want justice to be meted, and that's fine. Darkei shalom in a peaceful way. But when there's a riv, the moment it's a quarrel, that's a problem. And that's why Rashi says the example from this is Lot. What happened with Lot? What caused Lot to separate from the tzaddik Avraham? I'll say it's a meriva, it's a quarrel. I mean, the quarrel was not between Lot and Avraham. It was just between their shepherds. Avraham and Lot, in and of themselves, were like brothers in a sense, right? They were relatives. But the fact that a quarrel was created, that meant that they couldn't be together in peace in one place, because it had already become a quarrel between their people, and Lot had to move away from the tzaddik. When there's a riv, you can't maintain shalom. Quarrel. So now, Eis Dalet, paragraph 4, according to this, we'll understand automatically. So this is Rashi's explanation on the whole topic. Now we wanted to know, why doesn't Rashi say anything about v'hitzdiku et tzaddik v'shir tarasha, that he has to justify the innocent one and hold culpable the guilty one? Rashi doesn't have to explain anything, because according to Rashi, this is exactly what the pasuk is saying. When there's a quarrel, there won't be any peace. Even when they come to the mishpat, they're going to come to a court, and it's going to be an acrimonious, a combative, an argumentative kind of court situation. And even when the court says that the tzaddik is right and the rasha is wrong, it's not going to bring peace. Here we're not talking about litigants, about balei din, claimants from each other who are looking for truth, and therefore they're looking, whatever the truth is, we'll surrender to it, and we will look to have peace between each other. No. Even when one is a tzaddik and one is a rasha, one is righteous, one is wicked, it's just to find who's the righteous one, who's the wicked one. They're not interested in getting along. They're quarreling, and that's the way they want it to be. They'll go to a judge, and if the judge says this one's guilty, this one's innocent, they'll follow him. But they're not going to get over their quarrel. Okay, so now we understand why Rashi doesn't say anything on it, because the way Rashi learns the pasuk, simple. Paragraph 5. We could add more, that this pasuk is telling us something else. We could think that since there's a quarrel, right, and they're having an argument, So we could think one of them or both of them are pashut baalei machloket. They're bad people. They're argumentative people. Maybe we shouldn't even take their court case. Guys, when you figure it out and you can talk peacefully, come and I'll tell you who's right, who's wrong. Right now you're coming and you're fighting like in a non-peaceful way. We won't even take your Rishaim. We're not going to take your wicked people. We're not going to take your case. Both of them, because they're both arguing in a negative way. Right now, we're saying the fact that they're both arguing means they're both guilty of this negativity of the machloket. Could be one's right and one's wrong, but the fact that it devolved, it got to become a riv. Right now, we're seeing that as being takes two to riv. That's the assumption we have now. In miriva, if there's only one guy who wants to fight the other guy, it's not going to be a riv. This is the assumption. We're going to change that assumption, perhaps, but that's the assumption now. So we would think maybe we shouldn't even listen to the case and just punish them and see to finish the machloket. And maybe through the fact that we punish them and maybe one of them will admit to the truth. Well, we shouldn't, you guys are both bad people. We're not even going to listen to the case. No. So the Torah says, no, ki yeh riv. Even when there's a riv, even when they're coming in a way of a quarrel, which means they've both got negativity, listen to the case, shvatum, and judge them. Don't worry about who they are and the fact they're acting not appropriately by having this riv. The Beis Din has an obligation to judge the case, to fully put themselves into hearing the disagreement and decide a psak din, give out a judgment. In other words, even once we're at the place where we're thinking that since they're having a riv, a quarrel, it's impossible even after we judge, there would be room to think that since they're having a riv, they're both involved in the negativity of the quarrel. It's impossible that one is fully correct and one is not. If they're both entered into this machloket, they've probably both said things that are untrue. And therefore, one may think that if I'm going to find one of them a full tzaddik, fully correct, it must be a mistake. You could think that they must be both wrong. And if they come to Beis Din and I see one of them is taka correct, maybe I'm mistaken, because if he's correct, why is he in this bad behavior of having a riv? So the Torah says, no, don't think that way. Could be even though they're having a riv, they're having a quarrel, the tzaddik is fully right, the rasha is fully wrong in what they're arguing about, the case they're talking about. It could be that in terms of having a quarrel, they're both guilty. They're both doing something wrong, that they've escalated this disagreement, this technical disagreement, to become a personal argument between the two of them. You're both wrong about that, but it could be that when we talk about the fact that the tzaddik is right, that there's somebody who did something fully right, somebody who has a claim that's fully right, the other person is fully wrong, that still could be the case. Even if they're both wrong in terms of being people of machloket, but it could be in the actual technicalities of the case, there's one who's fully right, one who's fully wrong. So we have here, the Rebbe has explained to us that this pasuk seems very simple, but there's actually a very deep topic being taught us, and that is, when there's a riv, when you have an argument with somebody, don't let it become a riv, a quarrel. Deal objectively with the issue. You can go to a shofet, you can come to peace. Your objective should be to figure out the issue and be friends. If there's a riv, big problem. We tell the Beis Din, just because they're both bad people in the riv aspect, you have to listen to the case, because maybe there is one who's really right and one who's really wrong. And you can try and tell them not to have a riv, but you have to hear the case. And this case may actually have fully right, fully wrong. Okay. Till now, the Rebbe went with the approach, which is very common. There's a common English saying, it takes two to tango. Tango is a dance. It takes two to tango means whenever you see a fight, both of you are guilty. Parents do that always. Two kids come fighting, and we treat them both. Probably one of them, why did you hit your brother? He hit me first. Why did he hit me? Because he called me a this. Basically, they're both, there's no tzaddik here fully. There's the Riv, there's a problem here with the Riv. They're both a little bit. Now comes the Rebbe and says it's something deeper. And here's where I've thought that this is a reality of life, but it's unbelievable. It's spelled out here. V'yesh lem, says the Rebbe in the last paragraph, that the Gemara said a word. It's interesting, when we spoke about how the Gemara learns this pasuk, we said the Gemara learns that there's an extra layer here. There's Eidim Zomimim. So what happens? There's a guy who's really innocent, but two witnesses come and say that he's guilty. And he was made a Rasha. Two new witnesses come on. Those witnesses and say, you witnesses that said this guy's a Rasha, you were with us in a different city at that same time. So now those witnesses become a Rasha. The guy who they accused becomes a tzaddik. So the Gemara says, "V'tzdiku et tzaddik." They make the tzaddik the meikara. The guy who was really in the first place a tzaddik, they turn him back into a tzaddik, even though the first false witnesses tried to make him a rasha. This word tzaddik meikara can also be read tzaddik meikara. From the very beginning, he's a tzaddik. There's nothing negative about him. What can that mean? Says the Rebbe. If we play on this, we can really understand that perhaps the pasuk is telling us that when a Beis Din tzedek, when a true righteous Beis Din comes and says about a person that he's totally innocent, what you'll see is that me'ikara, from the very beginning, he's innocent. He's also innocent of being involved in the riv, in the quarrel, and the machloket. He's a tzaddik. He is not responsible or guilty or partner to the quarrel that's going on. Either both quarreling. It could be that it's the Rasha who's fully responsible for this riv. He is a tzaddik, not just a tzaddik in the technicality of who's right, who's wrong. He's a tzaddik in others. He never let himself into this quarrel. This guy is simply unreasonable and quarrels with him. I don't want to quarrel. So here we break this rule. It doesn't take two to tango. You can sometimes have somebody unreasonable, and that's enough that there's going to be a quarrel. You may not actively quarrel with him, but he's quarreling, and the whole situation is a quarrel. They say, well, there must be something on the other side. No, there isn't. Says the Rebbe in a footnote, for example, in Masechet Avot, we say, Zo machloket Korach v'chol adato. Korach's argument was Moshe Rabbeinu also. Did it take two to tango there? Did Moshe Rabbeinu part of the riv? No. All you need is a Korach who doesn't go away. Who's just, and now, so that's why we don't call it machloket Moshe v'Korach. Machloket shelishem shamayim, machloket, an argument for the sake of heaven. The pick up it says, for example, the machloket, the argument of Hillel and Shammai. They fight against each other. But that's a shamayim. They're fighting. They're arguing about the halacha and Torah. They're not fighting each other. What's a machloket, an argument not for the sake of heaven? That's the argument of Korach and his people. It doesn't say Korach and Moshe. Moshe wasn't part of the argument. Moshe wasn't part of the quarrel. Moshe held his ground, and it had to be brought to Hashem. Hashem had to show that Moshe is right, but he didn't quarrel, which tells us very, 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 very. I find this very powerful. For example, we're living in a time where the Western world only sees as much as there must be two sides. The whole story of Israel. The West, that's just the way, and I say we, because even the ones that are not so anti-Semitic to say that we're responsible for it, but they say, but the Gentile people, you have to hear the other side. They're right for expressing their side. There's no side. But it's hard to ever understand. It doesn't take two sides to fight. There's enough that there's one dafuk, there's one crazy side that there's no one to talk to, and there's a riv. Anyway, so this is the month of Elul. Very important to know that we have to make sure, even if we have disagreements, we have to eject any kind of a personal quarrel from it. And it also tells us in an interesting way that sometimes it could be that there's just one party to the riv. So God forbid we should be the party. So check yourself. There's a quarrel. 1 second, maybe the other guy's not quarreling with me. Or also not get depressed. If somebody, sometimes you have to hold your ground about something and the other person is quarreling, but what can you do? And this is I think a very very clearly comes out from this sikha. May everybody have peace in their relationships.